As far as the plan for designing a set, a larger set goes, of course, we had a roadmap set out that was a certain chunk of some movie coming up. So for me, I guess Cloud City was pretty much done by the time I got there. I play tested it, but I hadn't designed anything on it. So Jabba's Palace was coming up, and Jerry and I got together, and he said, we have some aliens, and here's a list of some of the ones we want to do. What do they do? So the Elam needed to do something, and these other aliens needed to do something. And so we knew we would have 3 or 4 cards of that particular race, and they would hopefully have some kind of connected mechanic. So that's the kind of thing that you do to make a set feel new and different. Obviously, we had big mechanics for some of the earlier sets with the walkers on Hoth, and we were taking whatever the movies gave us basically at that point. But Jabba's Palace was a place that was full of aliens. So in addition to the actions of the main characters, we had a lot of alien races that were added in that. So Jerry and I came up with some things, and we worked through some mechanics, and everybody brainstormed some mechanics and put them together. We tried them out, saw what worked, saw what didn't work, talked to the art department about what was available. It was always a question of you couldn't just come up with stuff out of thin air, which I guess is what they do on Magic the Gathering. But on the Star Wars game, I remember talking early on to Raleigh Tesh about, I want to make a card for the secret based on Dantooine. And he said, what's the image? And I was like, oh, it was a very educational moment for me. It needs an image, whatever it is. Now, as time went on, we got to where we could make our own images, like we said about the Dreadnought was a CGI image that we got to make. But those were very time intensive and expensive for us to make. So I didn't have very often. I couldn't just do anything that you wanted. So we used a lot of shots of aliens. There were Ugnaughts, and I don't remember what else were at Jabba's Palace. We had got to add cards for Jabba, of course, and I think Salacious Crumb got a card. So there were certain marquee characters that were going to get added. You knew there was going to be another Luke and another Han and whatever. And the main characters were always a problem. They always went through many, many iterations because everybody wanted to be good, special, different, to really show a different side of the same character. So I'm making a new Luke card. It's Luke in a new outfit, but it's got to still feel like Luke, and it's got to go in decks that have Luke. But hopefully it creates the ideas for new decks. So the mains that was something that it was I talk about falling on grenades. That was something that was like, all right, we haven't done any mains. Let me do some. We'll see how they go. So I would come up with some wacky idea, and everybody would go, no. And then we come up with something else, but by the time the deadline showed up, we had some cards that we liked, and if the testers liked them, we were ready to go. But yeah, coming up with a set means more cards that work together as opposed to cards that would stand alone, I think, in a smaller product. And we just kept to the schedule. I remember working on Endor and saying things like, well, what about the asteroid chain? No, that's Death Star 2. What about this other thing? No, that's Death Star 2. What about this one fight? That was in Death Star 2. I said, well, what is Endor about? They said, well, Ewoks. I said, okay, fine. So a lot of things got moved. Everybody had ideas about what needs to go in what set, because it wasn't just chopping the movie up in pieces exactly. It was more like scenes or themes or what have you. So that's the set design basically broke down like that.
Very cool. How long was the typical process, like say from beginning to end of the set, and then how long was something play tested?
Okay, so how long was the process of development, of design, and then how long was the process of play testing on a set? I think we were on a pretty tight schedule. I'm pretty sure we were coming out with 3 sets a year, at least at some point. I think that was the plan anyway. So we tried to work ahead. There was some point where we worked very hard on 2 sets at once in order to try and get some advance time so that we had more time to work on sets. But it was just a matter of just a few months. And then play testing would take another, I don't know, a month or so, something like that. There'd be the fly-in play test. Sometimes there was 2. Obviously we'd be playing a lot of games in between the fly-in play tests, and the play testers themselves would have physical copies of the cards that they could print out, and they would be constantly giving us feedback. So it was a very intense operation once we had versions for the playtesters to try. And a lot of those guys, I mean, I was a playtester before I became a designer. A lot of those guys came on board. A lot of them, Tom Lischke's background was as a player. He was the #1 player. But he had become a playtester because he was working with me as part of my group, and Joe Ulrich too. And so a lot of those guys were experienced players, which is very helpful. I think it's very helpful to be a very good high-level tournament player. I never was. I'm still not for any of the games I've worked on. But in terms of coming up with ideas, and Decipher taught me very much to work with what is called top-down, meaning here's your story, here's your movie, here's your game, here's your MMO. Make this into a card game. So that's an experience that I use to this day. I mean, I'm still working on projects that are based on IPs that already exist.